What's up everybody, how's it going? Today we're going to be taking a look at this PS2 Slim. I got this from a guy I know that I used to work with. He gave me a tote full of consoles, cords, and controllers. I got them completely for free because he said he got them for super cheap. He said he bought all these from a storage bin with the intentions of fixing them, but he said he was tired of messing with consoles. I'm happy to see that this at least turns on, so now we're going to test to see if the disk drive works. I'm going to speed this up a little bit because it took a while to try and read the disk. Unfortunately, it wasn't reading the disk, but a new laser is pretty cheap, and you could at least hear it trying to spin up the disk, so you know that the motor works. Sometimes with these top loader consoles, the sensor that tells it that the disk drive is shut in order to read the disk wears down over time. So I tried holding it down just to see if that was the issue, and it did the same thing. It still couldn't read the disk. By the time I finished testing it, I knew for sure that it was the laser that needed replaced, so I went ahead and ordered one on Amazon. This here was the one I bought. As you can see, it's just under $20, so not a bad price. You've got to be careful when you're ordering a replacement laser, because the PS2 Slim in particular has 3 different variations of the laser. This particular PS2 had the variation that was manufactured by Mitsumi. This particular laser is the PVR802W. So it's very important to take apart your PS2 before you order one, so you make sure you get one with the matching model number. The second variation is the KHM430, and it's manufactured by Sony. And apparently, I'm reading that it is swappable between the Mitsumi and the Sony. They can both be used in the same consoles. They work and look the exact same. The final variation you have to be careful of because it's different, and it can only be swapped with the same model number. So this final variation is manufactured by Philips. It looks like this, and it is the SPU 3170. I hope that helped and didn't confuse anybody further, but if you're still confused and have any questions, I'll link where I found this information down below. Now to start taking this apart, there are 6 screws hidden under these plastic covers. On the Slim model, all of these screws on the outside are the same size, so you don't have to worry about mixing them up. Once those are out, to pull this cover off, all you have to do is gently pull up on all the sides and pull it up. The great thing about these Slim models is the disk drive is so much simpler than the fat models, and they're so easy to take apart. There are 3 ribbon cables that need to be disconnected before you pull it out. Now we're going to be pulling out these tiny brackets that hold in the rod for the laser to move on. Be very careful when you're unscrewing these because they're so small, they'd be super easy to strip. And also be careful not to lose them, because I don't know where you're going to find another screw like that. These needle nose tweezers make it super easy to grab them and move them where you need them. I'm just going to be moving it back into place so I know where it goes. While you've got this rod off of here, it's a good idea to go ahead and clean it. That way the new laser will move smoothly. Also, while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and re-grease everything, so that way everything runs and moves smoothly. Feel free to add plenty of new grease to it, because over time it'll dry up, which is why the original needed replaced, and it keeps everything running good. Whenever the grease dries up, the disk drive tends to not move around like it should, and it might even stop working altogether. Now that we've done that, we're going to move this arm from the old laser over to the new laser. I highly recommend not dropping it like I did, because it took me forever to find the screw. Now that I finally did find it, we're going to finally add it to it. It's important to make sure that you transfer this over, because that is a big part of what holds the disk drive in place. It also attaches to the rod for the motor that allows the laser to move back and forth. Now that that's done, you want to transfer this rod over, but before you do that, you're going to want to grease it up too. You're also going to want to wipe this grimy old grease off of this arm. Once that's done, line everything back up and put the brackets back into place. Like I said earlier, if you don't have a pair of needle nose tweezers like this, they're going to really make your life a whole lot easier when you're doing this. Now that it's back together, make sure that you grease the other side, because that's extremely important as well for movement. Once you're done with that, just move it back and forth quite a few times and see how it feels. It's also good to do this because it can help spread the grease around a little bit and make it flow better. I felt like the rod needed just a little bit more, so I went ahead and added some, moved it around some more, and then it felt good. Now this is the fun part. I sped it up because I always struggle with ribbon cables and getting them back into place, and I always feel like that's the hardest part about putting something back together. Make sure it's seated back into place properly, and go ahead and plug in the remaining 2 ribbon cables. Once that's done, you're ready to put the top shell back on. Before I put the screws back in, I'm going to go ahead and test it and make sure it works, because if it doesn't and I have to pull it back apart again, then it's going to be annoying to have to unscrew and screw back in a million times. As you can see, I'm now having the issue of the sensor I was talking about earlier not working. As soon as I let my hand off of it, it stops reading. These sensors are so touchy that something as simple as just leaving the disc case on top of it will help it read. And you can see now that it's got some pressure, suddenly it wants to read the disc. Unfortunately, I forgot to record it, but in order to solve this issue, the sensor I was having the problem with was the one that's right above the power button inside of the top loader. And I just took some foam and shoved it down in there where that sensor is, so that way whenever the lid closes, it'll have some extra press from where the plastic piece is pressing on the foam, which then helps the sensor to press down where it's supposed to be. It's a super simple and super cheap fix, and if you're having this issue, I highly recommend that you do the same, because it's really not worth replacing that sensor. As you can see, it's not having any issues reading this disc. I'm going to go ahead and test a couple more games, because these are also backwards compatible with PlayStation 1 games, which are on CDs, and so it takes a different laser frequency to read them. So I want to make sure that that's working fine as well. I'm going to test this with one of the cooler items in my collection, Xenogears, and I highly recommend, if you have never played this game, check it out. It's a super awesome RPG. To be completely honest, as much as I like Final Fantasy VII, I even think that this one's even better. And if you didn't know, this was actually an earlier version of Final Fantasy VII. It was supposed to be Final Fantasy VII. And I believe Square Enix said that it was too dark, had too dark of themes, so they decided to split off and make them separate games. Also, as you can see, this was before I put that foam piece in there, so I'm having to leave the case on top of the console in order to get it to read. I'm going to throw this information out there for anybody that might be as confused as I was. So I'm using an HDMI adapter on this PS2, but the issue is it loaded the PS1 game fine, but there's some issues with it because my monitor doesn't support the resolution that the PS1 games are played in. So it was reading it, I could hear the sound, but it wouldn't display a picture because my monitor was too powerful to support that. I also wanted to test this copy of Sonic Heroes because my personal PS2 won't read this disc, so I wanted to see if it was the disc that was just too scratched up, or if mine eventually will need a laser replacement too. As you can see, it loaded right up though, so turns out my personal PS2 also needs a laser replacement. While I test this, I'd like to talk a little bit about the tote of stuff I got. Like I said earlier, I got it for free. The guy didn't know if any of it worked, but there was a lot of really cool stuff in there. This Fat Model PS3 was one of the things that was in there, and although it's in really rough condition, I powered it on, it works. I still need to test the disk drive after I clean it up though. This Atomic Purple N64 controller was also in there. It was super clean, super good condition, but the joystick was loose, and I felt like it wasn't really worth replacing, so I sold it as is for $15. This Slim model PS3 was also in there, but as soon as I took the top cover off, I realized there was no disk drive, so I just cleaned it up a little bit, sold it as is for $20. This nice 3DS was also in there, and I was hoping I'd be able to fix it and get it working. It powered on, but nothing displayed on the screens. I've seen a lot of people calling it the black screen of death. I didn't really know how to fix it, so I just sold it for parts for $30. I was able to sell all that on eBay. Now after I got this PS2 done, I held on to it for about a week or so before it sold, and I actually sold that locally on Marketplace for $90. I've still got some stuff in the bin that needs fixed. I've got 3 Wii controllers and an Xbox 360 controller, and I'm not sure if I'm going to clean those up or sell them for parts yet. Lastly, I have this GameCube, and it appears to be complete. I haven't tested it yet because I don't have any cords. Hopefully it works. My little brother has this GameCube that I also need to fix, so if the black one works, I'm probably just going to put the silver shell on it and give it back to him. And if the disk drive is broken, which I think it is, in the silver one, which will be in the black shell at that point, I'm considering just doing the SD card mod, where you bypass the disk drive altogether and boot your game straight from an SD card. But anyways, I'm impressed with how much money I've made from this free bin, and I'm really appreciative that I was able to get that, and hopefully I can do something like this again in the future, though I'm sure that I'm going to have to buy it. So thank you guys for watching. Look forward to the next videos that I'm going to have covering the stuff that I haven't fixed yet, and let me know what other kind of content you want to see. Leave a like, leave a comment, definitely ask any questions you have, and hopefully I'll be able to answer them. Thank you.